pretty ironic that he's there to teach her about the human connection. Yeah, she does need to learn that.
Just when you thought Netflix couldn't go any lower, they finally dropped season 2 of With Love, Meghan.
Netflix just told Meghan 3 words that changed everything. No Harry, no deal. The woman who walked away from royalty couldn't walk away from this, and the reason why will shock you. Let's dive in.
Watch the first 2 episodes. I didn't see any cooking. I didn't see any cooking in the show. That was...
She's like, oh crap. What am I making? I'm making crap here. Look at this face. You guys zoom. Look at this face. I can't.
For a long time, this story was sold as the ultimate modern fairy tale, the kind people wanted to believe in. 2 outsiders, 1 great escape, a love powerful enough to walk away from everything. But when you look closely, that story never quite lined up because the details kept changing, the timelines shifted, and the explanations became vague right when clarity mattered most. At first, people brushed it off as privacy, then it felt like protection, and eventually it started to feel like something else entirely. Something was being held together carefully, deliberately, and maybe a little desperately. Something that looked perfect from a distance, but felt increasingly fragile up close. The cracks were already forming beneath the surface, and what's about to unfold is darker than anyone anticipated. The way they met was supposed to be simple, straightforward, almost cinematic. A blind date, mutual friends, instant chemistry. But somehow, every retelling sounded different. Details moved around like pieces on a chessboard. Moments were softened in some versions, sharpened in others. Certain parts were emphasized, while others quietly disappeared, and people noticed. Was it Instagram? Was it a setup? Who introduced them? These weren't major contradictions, but they were noticeable enough to make you pause, to make you wonder why a straightforward love story needed so many different versions. At the same time, secrecy became a recurring theme, an alleged private ceremony that nobody witnessed, children rarely seen, a life shielded so tightly that even close family seemed kept at arm's length. Early on, people called it sweet, protective. Then it felt cautious, carefully managed, and eventually it started to feel unsettling. Because privacy is one thing, but consistency builds trust, and without consistency, doubt creeps in slowly, quietly, and then all at once. Still, the public wanted to believe. They wanted this to be the happy ending. But beneath that desire to believe, questions were piling up that nobody wanted to ask out loud. Behind the scenes, the dynamic didn't feel as smooth as it looked in headlines. Harry appeared reactive, emotional, quick to bristle when challenged. He'd spent his entire life being told what to do, and suddenly he was in a relationship where he could finally make his own choices. It felt like liberation, but liberation can also mean losing your footing. Meghan, on the other hand, projected certainty, control, a clear sense of direction that didn't leave much room for hesitation. She knew what she wanted, she knew how to get it, and she wasn't afraid to make bold moves. That combination can work. Sometimes it even thrives. Strong personalities can balance each other when they're aligned, but only when both people are moving toward the same goal. Here, the goals began drifting apart, not loudly, not publicly, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. Harry seemed focused on healing, on processing trauma, on finding peace away from the spotlight. Meghan seemed focused on building, on creating, on establishing a platform that would give her the influence she'd always sought. Neither goal was wrong, but they weren't exactly compatible either, and most people weren't looking yet. They were still caught up in the romance, the rebellion, but the signs were there for anyone willing to see them. Celebrity relationships don't usually collapse overnight. They fade unevenly. One person's star begins to rise, the other's relevance becomes conditional. History is full of examples. Couples who swear they're stronger together, who build empires on their combined brand, until together stops being profitable, until one person realizes they might be worth more alone. Meghan never hid her ambition. Visibility mattered, influence mattered, building something that would outlast the tabloid cycle mattered. And there's nothing wrong with ambition. It's driven remarkable achievements. But ambition without balance creates tension. Harry's appeal, however, was inherited. It was tied to legacy rather than momentum, to a title that meant something simply because of the family he was born into. He didn't earn his fame, he was born into it. Because when momentum becomes currency, when relevance is measured in quarterly metrics, imbalance creates pressure. One person becomes the asset, the other becomes the accessory. And that shift doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments, in meeting rooms and conference calls. But the real test came when business entered the marriage, when personal dreams became professional partnerships. From the outside, the Netflix deal looked massive, prestigious, limitless. A reported $100 million. Creative freedom, the backing of one of the world's most powerful platforms. It seemed like validation, like proof that walking away from royal life had been a brilliant strategic move. But inside the industry, the value was very specific. Streaming platforms are ruthless. They don't invest in hope, they invest in guaranteed returns. Lifestyle content? Replaceable. There are thousands creating that every day. Inspirational messaging? Everywhere. Personal branding? Overcrowded. The real asset was access, royal proximity, a window into a world people are endlessly curious about. And that curiosity didn't revolve around Meghan alone. It revolved around what Harry represented. He was the insider. She was the outsider who'd gotten in. That combination had value. Real, measurable, bankable value. But when the content didn't deliver what executives quietly expected, when the documentaries felt more like therapy sessions than royal exposés, patience thinned fast. Netflix didn't sign them for vague empowerment content, they signed them for something nobody else could provide. But Meghan believed she could pivot the narrative. She believed her vision, her voice, was enough to carry the partnership forward.
It was like the people who came over to hang out with her in her rented kitchen and to be on the show, they all were in on the joke. It's like the Truman Show with Jim Carrey.
This is where things reportedly turned tense. Meghan didn't want to be just a face anymore. She didn't want to be the supportive partner standing slightly behind. She wanted authority, creative control, final say. She wanted to produce, to direct, to shape projects from the ground up without compromise. On paper, that sounds confident, empowered. But confidence without a proven track record makes investors nervous. Hollywood is brutal. It doesn't care about potential or passion. It cares about numbers, about track records, about whether your last project made money.
Since she really can't cook at all, like she's a terrible chef, and then when she does cook, they're like food, they're insects.
Meghan had visibility. She had name recognition. She had a platform millions followed, but she didn't have hits, not the kind that opened doors and silenced doubters. Executives don't gamble on ambition alone. They gamble on results. And when Meghan allegedly pitched With Love Meghan as her solo project, pushing to move forward without Harry, she expected negotiation. She expected counteroffers and creative compromises, but what she got was something entirely different. The response was blunt, brutally, devastatingly blunt. No Harry, no deal. Not a discussion, not a counteroffer, a full stop. Because from Netflix's perspective, Harry wasn't excess weight, he wasn't the less interesting half, he was the hook, the only remaining thread connecting the brand to global curiosity. Without him, the value dropped sharply, dramatically, almost completely. And that realization reportedly landed hard, not just professionally, personally, because for the first time, the message was clear, undeniable. She wasn't being rejected as part of a couple, she was being rejected alone. Her vision wasn't enough, her ambition wasn't enough, her name, separated from his, didn't carry the weight she believed it did. It's one thing to walk away by choice, it's another to be told you're not valuable enough to walk away. And in that moment, everything shifted. The power dynamic, the narrative, because the entertainment industry had just delivered a verdict, and it wasn't the one she'd been expecting. But that's where the emotional shift began, where resentment started replacing partnership. An albatross isn't useless. That's not what the metaphor means. It's heavy. It's something you can't discard, but also can't outrun. Harry became both asset and obstacle, necessary yet limiting. The same title that opened doors now defined the ceiling. The same royal connection that made them valuable now made independent success impossible. Because how do you build your own empire when your value is permanently tied to someone else's bloodline? How do you prove yourself when every door opens because of a last name you didn't earn? And resentment doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with dramatic confrontations. It settles in quietly. through tone, through distance, through subtle repositioning. When you stop being partners and start being leverage. When conversations shift from we to I. When reliance turns into frustration, the relationship doesn't explode. It erodes. Slowly, steadily, in ways nobody notices until it's too far gone. And the public image remained carefully intact. The appearances continued. The brand looked strong, but behind closed doors, something fundamental had changed. The balance had tipped. Meghan isn't done chasing relevance. That much is clear. Rebranding is always an option, so is reinvention, so is separation disguised as evolution. Hollywood is full of couples who stay legally married but professionally separated, who maintain the appearance of unity while pursuing completely different paths. It's a strategy, a way to have it both ways. Harry, meanwhile, appears increasingly boxed into a role he didn't anticipate. Still valuable, still necessary, but no longer steering the direction. He's the title, the access, the royal connection that makes everything else possible. But he's not the driving force anymore, and maybe he never was. This story isn't ending with a dramatic announcement. There won't be a press conference or a tell-all interview. It's unfolding quietly, behind closed doors. One strategic decision at a time, because the most revealing collapses don't happen in public. They happen in moments nobody sees, in conversations nobody overhears. They happen when ambition finally outweighs attachment, when the cost of staying together exceeds the value of being apart. The fairy tale is over, because when ambition outweighs attachment and business trumps partnership, the ending writes itself. We've just watched the slow-motion collapse of what was supposed to be the greatest love story of our generation. So here's the real question. Can Meghan build an empire without Harry, or is she stuck forever? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this video opened your eyes, smash that like button, subscribe for more inside stories, and hype this video if you like it. We'll see you in the next one.